Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video of Fox Flicks On What Cultural Comics. Today we're going to see the top 10 DC animated universe fates that were worse than dying. Let's hop in.
While very few characters actually straight up die in the DC animated universe, that didn't stop Paul Dini, Bruce Timm, Alan Burnett, and the rest of that legendary team from basically doing whatever they wanted with their characters. There are some genuinely
Oh
gruesome
yeah,
fates in these cartoons
I
supposedly
know
made
that
for
show.
kids that, well, to be perfectly honest, explain a lot about me and my whole deal when I go back and watch them. I'm Ewan, this is what
If they were to reboot Static Shock, do you think that all they would need to change would just be the animation? I mean, yeah, it's literally meant to be a story about a black guy who gets the abilities to control electricity, and no, that's it. That's it.
What Culture Comics, and here are 10 DC animated universe fates worse than death. Number 10. Living in Constant Fear.
Oop.
Batman the Animated Series.
Huh.
It's
did
almost
that?
hilarious to think of someone genuinely fearing the Riddler, but then most people haven't pissed him off like Nigma's old boss, Daniel Mockridge. We have Mockridge to
Oh.
thank, in fact, for the Riddler even existing, as before Mockridge screwed him over, the cowardly boss fired him so that he wouldn't have to pay Nigma any royalties. Edward Nigma was merely an admittedly self-obsessed game designer. Nigma then became the Riddler 2 years later in order to get his revenge
2
on the
years?
parasitical capitalist, but Batman
I'm sorry, but 2 years? Now, if you had said like 2 weeks, maybe even 2 months, that would have been fine. But 2 years? Guy literally had no life. Enigma, put the book down and go get a life. Come on, man.
foiled his plans, saving
And hell,
Mockridge
I'm
from
one
a
to talk.
life-sized and lethal recreation of Nigma's Riddle of the Minotaur game. That said, Nigma did manage to get away in the end, promising to return one day for Mockridge to finish what he started, and by that, he means to cut him up into multiple tiny pieces. Oh no. The last scene of the episode is Mockridge, who we never actually see again, cowering with a shotgun as he tries to get some sleep. But every single shadow and noise makes him think the man he ruined has finally returned to ruin him right back. Number 9.
That is definitely
Just being
Theo.
Clayface. Batman the Animated Series. The
Yeah,
big
that
difference
sucks.
between the Batman villains and the rest of the DC universe is Rogues Gallery. The reason why they stand out so much from the rest is because
Damn.
they all have some aspect of their backstory that makes them more tragic figures than just straight up antagonists. And one villain in particular lives an existence that can best be described as nightmarish: Clayface. Clayface in the DCAU was an actor named Matt Hagen who was in deep with the mob, and so had to become a gopher in order to keep the holders of his leash nice and happy. Fortunately, he was also a master of disguise, able to even frame Bruce Wayne for corruption thanks to a special cream that makes the face as malleable as clay. But when Hagen outlived his
overused it.
usefulness, the mob decided to do away with him by dumping the toxic cream all over him and in him, transforming him into
that
the
was it.
monstrous being known as Clayface. The effects of the transformation on his mental state vary from writer to writer in the comics, but in the animated universe, it's clearly had a severely negative impact on the mind, to the point where parts of his personality can break off into separate consciousness and have no memory of being one giant clay creature. Number
Yep.
8. Turn to Stone. Static Shock. When an experimental new form of gas is set off across the city of Dakota during a gang riot, its creator, Alva Industries, led by the corrupt capitalist Edwin Alva, is obviously pretty desperate to cover its tracks, seeing as how they've thrown all of Dakota
Oof.
into chaos by turning a good chunk of its citizens into mutant monsters. Most Bang Babies, as
heroes.
they're called by the media, only get one power, but
And villains.
Edwin Alva's son, Edwin Alva Jr., seemingly finds a way to have his cake and eat it too in order to get back at his dad for not paying enough attention to him. By filling small bubbles with the Bang Baby gas and covering his suit all over with them, he can have temporary samples of different powers and then use those powers to attack Alva assets. However, for
useful.
all his intelligence, the kid forgot to take into account the obvious weak spot of this design. What happens when all the bubbles burst at once?
Like this?
Well, the answer is that Batman's body kind of goes sort of absolutely goddamn haywire until all of the powers
Yes, it
at
does.
once overclock his body and turn him to stone. Ouch. Alva Sr. did eventually manage to bring his son back, but
That's
for
great.
a while, being permanently entrapped in a rocky prison was genuinely on the table.
Hey,
Number
you were
7,
revived at
turning
least.
into an
Shut the hell up.
irradiated Earth monster, Batman Beyond. When Warner Bros. Demanded a teenage Batman show for the purposes of making something for slightly younger kids than BTAS's demographic, Alan Burnett responded by making the darkest entry
I
in the
liked
entire
Batman Beyond.
DCAU,
It was pretty good.
as well as the dominant force on this list because, dear God, the body horror in Batman Beyond did not mess around. One of the episodes that exemplified this dark tone was Earthmover, where Batman of the future Terry McGinnis' friend Jackie discovers that not only is her father Tony still alive, but that he is currently living an existence that is the stuff of nightmares.
Yep,
Due
there's
to an
hell.
accident in an abandoned mine shaft when Jackie was just a toddler, her father was trapped under a pile of rocks with radioactive waste that his business partner Bill was disposing of. This mummified his nearly dead corpse and fused his consciousness with the Earth itself. After years of
Damn.
learning how to control his powers and festering with hatred for Bill, whom he was convinced intentionally tried to do away with him to steal the business and his family,
Do have to say though, that is an amazing way to be created. You're buried in Earth, you get toxic waste poured on you, you become the Earth. Gotta admit, that's cool even if it is deadly.
Tony attempted to steal back his daughter and take revenge. The very thought of being trapped deep underground as a living corpse, slowly rotting away while remaining alive the entire time, losing your mind at the same time while you're forgotten about by the world above, is so existentially terrifying, it's hard to even know where to begin. Number 6. Becoming an anthropomorphic cat person thing.
Oh.
Batman the Animated Series.
It's this
There were
episode
a lot
now.
of episodes of BTAS, and not all of them are as fondly remembered, or remembered period, as Heart of Ice or Almost Got 'Em. Case in point, Tiger Tiger, an episode that would fall to the wayside with the other bottom tier BTAS episodes, but elevated, if only slightly, by the tragic character of Tigress. Tigress was a genetically enhanced cat person created by one Dr. Emil Dorian, your
Yep.
run-of-the-mill Dr. Moreau wannabe, complete with his own island of hybrid sins against nature, a fate that he then forces upon Selina Kyle, whom Tigress has of course fallen in love with. When Batman arrives to
And
save
yep.
Selina, Tigress finds himself caught between his need for companionship and his respect for Kyle as a person. In the end, he makes the right choice, helping Selina turn back into a human and catching Dorian. But there's no way to reverse what's been done to him, leaving him effectively alone in the world for the rest of his days. Number 5.
Which
Turned
may have
into
not
a
been
mini
too
Joker.
long,
Batman Beyond, Return
considering
of the
he's like a
Joker.
frickin'
The
werewolf.
Bat family is pretty messed up in the DCAU, even when compared to the much darker and grittier comics. Pretty much everyone leaves Bruce in the end due to either disagreements with his methods or good old-fashioned emotional trauma. Oh boy, guess which one of those young Tim Drake fits into? When the Joker found himself getting a bit on in the ears, he sought to ensure his brand of lunacy would go on forever. So he found and kidnapped the second Robin, Tim Drake, to experiment on until he drove the poor boy hopelessly insane. To
And
top off
he
all this
succeeded.
torture, he then painted Robin's face to resemble his own, dressing him up in a small Joker costume to complete the look of a Jokerized Mini-Me. Which would be hilarious if that reveal wasn't immediately followed up with Joker showing Batman in excruciating detail what it took to get Robin into this state. The idea that Robin, even after breaking free of the conditioning, would have to wrestle with what the
slightly.
Joker did to him for the rest of his life is nothing short of harrowing. And although Tim is eventually saved by Terry in the film, being the vessel for Gotham's most infamous tormentor is up there with the worst things a DC character has ever experienced, in animation or in the comics. Number 4. Aged into Oblivion. Justice
Ooh.
League Unlimited. Mordred's
Fast.
mother, Morgan Le Fay, granted him eternal youth until he had the kingdom he was destined to rule. Well, in Justice League Unlimited, he finally got that kingdom when he got hold of one of the DC Universe's most powerful magical items, the Amulet of First Magic, which he uses to turn on his mother and banish everyone older than him physically into another dimension, leaving him free to rule over the world's children. However, thanks to some good old-fashioned goading on the part of a kidified Batman, Mordred ages himself up to his physical prime, thus banishing himself under his own rules. As a direct consequence of this, Mordred undoes the eternal youth spell his mother put on him so very long ago, leaving him with only eternal life. In DC terms, this means being a barely alive vegetable of an old man drooling all over yourself while Mummy Dearest wipes your mouth forever.
Yeah, that's hell.
The most dignified of endings, it must be said. Number 3. Made into a vegetable. Justice League. One of the most heinous villains in the original Justice League cartoon was John Dee, otherwise known as Dr. Destiny, a villain with the ability to control people's dreams and even kill them in said dreams like Freddy Krueger. This pathetic little weasel gets unimaginable psychic powers, and the first thing he does is slowly torture his wife to death in her sleep. So in that respect, what happens to him is 100% justified, but that doesn't make it any less yikes-inducing. When Batman comes at him, being the last man standing due to his affinity for staying up for multiple nights, Dr. Destiny tries harder and harder to get Bruce to fall asleep, even gaining access to his perception, even when awake as they get closer towards each other. But Batman, through lots of caffeine and a meditative trance, manages to—
I mean, imagine that. Batman walks into the door, slams down some money, and is like, "Give me the biggest cup of coffee you got." Imagine that. No, seriously, that's hilarious. Batman walks into the local Starbucks.
block Destiny out, leaving the villain to try and drive a syringe full of a very powerful sedative into the Dark Knight as a last resort. But of course, this is Batman, so he knocks Dee aside, causing him to inject himself accidentally with said sedative. This puts Dee in a permanent vegetative state, lying in a hospital, only ever able to hum the little ditty that Batman hummed to block him out. Number 2. Turned into living goop. Batman Beyond. One of the most disturbing fates in all of Batman Beyond belongs to Aaron Herbst. Aaron was a rather lonely man whose only interaction was with the frozen supervillain Ink, whom he talked to all day and creepily projected his baggage onto, quickly falling in love with the frozen woman. But if you studied the myth of Pygmalion at all, and the various retellings and interpretations thereof, you know this was pretty much destined for nothing good. Aaron, after being fired due to his creepy fixation on the frozen villainess, breaks Ink out of prison, convinced that she'd return his affections. But Ink is a mercenary and also very not obviously into a guy who just lusted after her while she was frozen, and so was just using him from the beginning. Long story short, Ink ends up giving him a taste of the affliction that affects her, but with not the ability to control it like she has, leaving him just a living puddle of goop, barely able to talk or even move. And so, Aaron's story ends with him in the same—
From what he said, it's not the full dose. That is why he's like this.
Facility he worked at, a patient this time around, being cared for by another lonely person who projects all of their insecurities onto him like he did to Ink. And number 1, ravaged by Venom.
Now we got Bane.
Probably the most brutal fate of any character in the DCAU belongs to poor Bane in Batman Beyond. Bane is by far one of the most accurate translations in the entire DCAU, with very little of him being changed from book to screen. So when Batman Beyond came along, Bane, being a Batman villain, needed an epilogue. As such, they decided to do an episode wherein Venom, the drug that made Bane into the monstrous form he's famous for, had been repurposed into a super steroid for athletes. Terry, picking up on the Bane connection, goes to confront him. Except when he tracks the Bruiser down, he finds only a shadow of the monstrous merc that he once was. Years of using the drug having degraded his body into a barely living husk, constantly dependent on life support in order to live. And those were just 10 DCAU fates worse than death. Drop us a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and find more of our stuff at whatculture.com/comics. I've been you.
Alright folks, that's where we're going to end off today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link in the description, and I'll see all of you folks next time when we flick on. Peace out.